Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Okay, so I don't have the theme music with me because I'm out of town. But if you know it, sing along. BzyPeach, yeah, Busy Peach. Busy Peach. Say what, Busy Peach? Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well. This is so much fun. This has been a big kind of launch week for me, like on both sides of my business. So I'm very, very excited to be here, awake. Yeah, yeah,
And looking very lovely in some handmade gear.
yeah. Don't worry about that. We can still see.
Yeah.
Try to put my studio, but it wouldn't be shenanigans if we didn't have a few shenanigans. So
Listen. For those of y'all that are new and watching, there's a reason why I call it shenanigans because we anticipate something's gonna go wrong, and that's okay. If it does, no problem. Then we just keep going. We pivot. We pick up the phone. We do the. We do
yeah,
what we gotta do.
yeah, yeah. But
So,
I figured
mhm.
I would throw the dress on because that's like the big thing for me. Yeah. And I've actually machine washed it at this point. I just put it in the
Oh.
dry L bag. So yeah, for those of you
Ooh.
watching at home and wondering what loveliness that I put together today, and if you've been to my profile, you know about this one. So about a year ago, it was my first. So in my day job, I'm an independent urban planner. I'm independent researcher scholar, and
Mhm.
I got invited to do a lecture at Columbia University by the Columbia University Planning and Architecture students. Yeah, and this was my
Okay.
first in person at an Ivy in New York, and it just happened to be a week before Vogue. So this was like this like now I actually went back home because I live in DC and that's an
Yep.
easy drive and train ride. But
Mhm.
I got the invitation, I think it was Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I don't my size has changed since I've been doing in-person stuff. Now I've been doing things like this where you
Mhm.
only see me from here up. And so I made it work. But I
Gotcha.
I needed something. I needed to look like I could fit in something. And so before I learned how to crochet, I learned how to sew. And
Okay.
I, this is the first time I've ever been able to have like a dedicated space with a decent machine. So for the longest time, I was just crocheting. And
Okay.
I'll get more into like how I got back to crochet during the pandemic. But
Yes.
yeah, I'll get more to that. But like this is kind of the pinnacle. I had fallen in love with Lion Brand Woolly Stick and Quick. I knew that it could work up quickly. I was like, you know what? Let me work something up quick. It may not be a long term solution because there's a little bit of an itch factor.
Oh,
But I was like, I just need something to perform in. And I treat even my lectures as performances. I do know that people need that edutainment factor. But
mm.
my main concern is people knowing that we need to do better with the world and we need to understand these concepts,
Ooh,
especially
yeah.
when it comes to what I teach on, which is urban planning. And yes, absolutely, I dig into like the racial disparities, the fact that Black folks have not gotten a good deal in that at all.
Yes.
So I wanted, and then green's kind of been it's my on that side of my work. That's kind of my theme color. Of course, invoking the earth, and this
Okay.
colorway is actually called bluegrass. They
Ooh.
rarely sell it, but of course, at least as far as I know, I'm a North Carolinian, but obviously Africa and obviously some Native American, and I'm tracing that lineage fully, but
Okay.
I know what I know, and I know what's in the mirror. I know I'm Black, so I was like, okay, I know I'm Black. I know I'm from North Carolina. Most of
Right.
my people have been in North Carolina for about at least 5 generations, from what I can see.
Yeah.
Some will represent, and we're having that Beyonce moment right now where we're learning. Of course, Rhiannon Giddens being on that banjo lick. She's from Greensboro. I'm from Greensboro.
Girl, listen. Yeah,
Yes,
girl, we'll come
yes.
back to that. We'll come
We're gonna
back to
come back
that
to
for
that
sure.
too. But that was the inspo of this. And so I
Okay.
literally finished this garment 2 hours before the presentation. I was kind of, I think I was cut, yeah. But it was really just getting the sleeves together. I had the bodice, I had everything, but yeah, I cut it, I weaved the ends, and then I got on the train and went down the street to Columbia. And then when on the way back, I went by Nitty City. So I had a good day. I had a good day.
Wow.
And then the next week when you saw me at Vogue, I
Mhm.
wore it again because I was like, you know what? This is the thing, the biggest thing I've done. You know what we do? We rock our garments. Over here on
Right.
Yarn World, we don't exactly have a frock tails in the same way, but Vogue and Rhinebeck and all of our
Yes.
principles serve the same function for those of us who work with needle art. So I was like, I'm gonna rock this again. And
I
people have
love
seen me
it.
and people have been watching me make it. And you, Laura, you saw it in person. That yeah. So you can vouch for that. It does fit.
Look, the people can see for themselves.
Yeah.
So yes. Listen, okay, so you gave us a lot to chew on and a lot of topics
Oh, we can go
that we
all
go
the way back.
yeah, that we're gonna really touch on because we want folks to really know what you've got going on because it's a lot that you have going on and it's amazing. I love peeking in on Instagram and seeing what you're doing over there, and it was so amazing to be able to meet you in person in real life finally, and get hugs from you and from KristPattern Bay,
Yes.
and that was just amazing. So, and that was at Vogue. So let's back up just a little bit because I know on Instagram we can find you in two different places, right?
Yes.
But for folks who may not know, who you are and why there's a separation between the two, Instagram accounts. Um, let's start with Chris Pattern
Yes.
and fiber arts. When did you first start learning to either knit, crochet, or any fiber art initially?
So I'm at the very least a second generation sewist.
Okay.
My mom basically, I was born in '85, and my mom pretty much dressed me and everything coming out of those pattern books for babies in the mid '80s. She
Yes.
has 4-H ribbons. She worked at various like department and fabric stores in Central North Carolina, and so by the at some, I was watching by osmosis. She had a 1970s Sears Kenmore machine that
Yes.
basically she just replaced. Like she made my pandemic mask on it. Like,
Was it in the cabinet? Was it in the,
oh, it's
with
in the table. It sits in the
yes.
table. It folds out. It's level. It's kind of embrace. That's kind of what I needed. I realized why it was level because, like, she actually has well, she has scoliosis. It's been corrected, but
Mm-hmm.
ergonomics is very important to both of us, and so that was something that was
Ah,
passed down. Um, I would like take scraps and make
okay.
little bitty things. The absolute first craft she started me on was like stitching with plastic canvas. So we
Stitching with what?
plastic canvas, like that plastic canvas mesh that
Yeah.
they
Oh,
sell in sheets kind of
yes.
next to the needle crafts, like it's usually at Michael's, it's on that. Yeah.
Yep.
So we for Christmas every year when I was little in the early '90s, I would I'm an only, but my parents are not onlys. They're from big families. Dad is
Mm-hmm.
one of 10, mom is one of 5. And so
Mm.
basically for my first cousins in my age range, so I had about 10 first cousins that are roughly in that millennial age range.
Okay.
So I would make mom and I would bake cookies together. So that's a craft too. We would bake cookies together, like the little sugar cookies, and decorate them.
Oh, you're taking me back.
Yes.
Yes.
And then one year for the aunts, I mom found me this leisure arts plastic canvas like on the farm book, and it had all these little shapes. Like we made
Mhm.
these magnets out of so I basically embroidered into the plastic canvas these like jam bottles and like an apple core. I don't know why it was an apple core. It could have just been a regular apple, but we're talking leisure arts in
Right.
early
Right, right.
1990s. They
Country,
have a theme.
country chic, country chic.
Yes. And so I made a little of those little country chic magnets, and I got the little magnetic strip and I put it on the back. And so I mailed that out. So that was one craft. then in grade school, I was also in the gifted and talented, and so one of the projects we had, yeah, one of the projects we did was make our own books. Now this is well before even CD-ROMs. We were using Macintosh 2E computers in the computer lab. They were in
Okay.
color. They lived in the computer lab.
Okay.
So they had bought us these empty, stapled together books. And
Mm-hmm.
so I hand drew, and then my mom helped me hand trace the lettering and glue in the illustrations and the writings of a book. It's called Strawberry Jam Takes a Walk. And then there's a sequel, Apricot Preserves, goes to a birthday party. So when we talk about my second Instagram, I'll get more into that because that's like showing up. Like that's it, the blending of my
Oh.
creativity has shown up for over 30 years. So
Oh. Okay. Okay.
it was drawing, it was embroidery into plastic canvas. Mom got me a pot
Mm-hmm.
holder loom. So
Yeah, girl. Did we live in
yeah,
the same household? Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
puff paint. The friendship bracelets when they made their revamp in the late 90s. I was making the little friendship bracelets. I had beads, tiny beads at one point, and then she had a little boy crochet hook that was just laying around. There was an
Mm-hmm.
embroidery hook that was just sitting there because she didn't finish embroidery. She basically was at Piece Goods and Hancock Fabrics. That's this the era we're talking about here. Yes, this is that era.
And
And then,
this was in DC?
no, this is in Greensboro. I grew up in Greensboro.
In Greensboro. Okay. Yeah, because I'm like, okay, all the names, everything. Because I grew up in Richmond.
Yeah.
So, I'm just feeling all of this. I'm like, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so this was that era. We were, and for a period of time, mom worked at Piece Goods in the mid 90s. When my
Hmm.
parents split, so she worked at Piece Goods and also in the school system. And so when I wasn't like hanging out with my dad going to Borders, I would like sometimes go to work with mom. And so I would be, not only would I get to see all this stuff, so yeah, I think the DNC embroidery floss was there. So I was just like,
Hmm.
can you put some to the side? And then
Right.
sometimes we would sit in the pattern room because they had a very like our Piece Goods had it was set off to the side. It was in a little
Okay.
alcove. All the drawers were along the walls, and then you had all the books. So we could kind of be put. The children that came to work with their mothers could be put in the back, being quiet, behaving,
Hmm.
drawing, and looking in the pattern books and reading our books.
Right.
So that was also, and of course, yeah, mom was still sewing at home. And, you know, fifth grade pictures was my first sewing project. I wanted to do this was the best era. And
Okay.
so anybody who's been on my feed and seen one of my cloth masks that my mom made for me, it had
Right.
little bumble bears on it. I had a whole vest with those bumble bears on the front and a little shiny satin royal blue in the back. My hair is up. It looked kind of like some way my grandmother wears my hair. It was not cool at all. I was not. This was this was Urkel time as well. And I've been
But you
wearing
were
these glasses.
I'm pretty sure you were feeling it though. I know you were feeling it like,
Yeah, no,
this
it
is
was
it.
no. Like anybody who's read Taraji P. Henson's biography, she talks about how her mom sewed for her and she wanted this particular outfit sewn and it was not in style, but it was in style for her. That vest was in style for me that day
Got it.
on picture day and under my
Right.
turtlenecks. And there's so many things like me making like turtlenecks and mock necks and certain fabrics and certain things. All of that
Hmm.
is still like evident. Fast forward, it's prom night of 2004. It's my senior prom. Mom and I worked together. So we went to JCPenney first,
Hmm.
looked at the dresses, looked at the styles,
Hmm.
went to Hancock, went in the Simplicity book, and we actually hacked together. I think my skirt
Hmm.
was actually no, it was a Simplicity pattern, prom pattern that was and of course I think it was a spring pattern. This is prom, so it was a bodice that was technically separate, and it
Okay.
was and we put an iridescent mesh sheer over the top of it. And then
Okay.
it was kind of like a line, a little bit of a pleat, kind of a satin, kind of like a peach satin. Now I wanted a blue dress. My mom loves like peaches and greens, so
Yes, mom.
I
Right.
act, and this is, I'm Southern, so because my senior picture, I got the drape one, and that's the one that's on our mantle. My mom has me
Hmm.
drape, My dad had the one with me leaning up against the wall, and then in the environment. But that was what my dad's
Yes.
picture looked like. So basically, my parents got the versions of the senior pictures that they had of
Right.
me at their respective houses,
Right.
and so that was kind of, and clothing. So yeah, mom and I, we were sewing, but then we were also going to stores like Pennies, because we lived
Mhm.
near Four Seasons Mall, and of course Peace Goods at the
Yeah.
time used to be near there. Now it had, I think it, by this point when I was in high school, it had closed.
Yeah.
Hancock was still hanging on.
Yeah.
Joanne had come to town.
Yeah.
Joanne at right now in Greensboro is just Joanne, and then Reconsidered Goods, which is our reuse store, and then I think
Mm.
one or two of our WalMarts still
Okay. Okay.
have. But what happened was I went off to NC State. I
Yep.
went off. I majored in communication. I thought I was going to go into the design school and graphic design, but I submitted a portfolio full
Right.
of. I had a couple of like drawn pieces, but
Okay.
my main sketchbook was written words.
Okay.
So clearly, they were like, "Yeah, maybe you might need to be in the comms department instead." And I got there and I loved it and I stayed there. Now, of course, we had this whole craft center on campus, but I was just so engaged
Oh.
with the political scene. And
Right.
that is why there's that whole other Instagram exists, and it started first. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had kind of abandoned some of my crafts a little bit. I would
Okay.
come back to craft over the next, I would say, 15 or so years, when something was going, like during the Christmas holiday. Like I might come home and
Mhm.
try to mess with a piece of yarn,
Okay.
and I could single crochet, but I couldn't remember exactly the rhythm. And of course, I'm using the basic aluminum boy hook, number 4, not
Yes.
not conducive to
Yeah.
sticking with something. I went into a yarn store, which is a affirming yarn store now, Gate City Yarns, right in downtown Greensboro. But when I went in there that day, they looked at me weird. I walked out with like this really soft cotton. And I think
Right.
what I was doing at the time, this was 2010, and I was adapting. Like I had started doing the potholder loom again, but I had figured out
Okay.
how to string it with regular yarn. One of the early YouTube videos had this technique. And
Yeah.
so I was sewing them, piecing them together to create scarves. I had
Okay.
created the early version of KristPattern called Fabulous Without Frills. That didn't really it now it's interesting because Les, the KristPattern Bay, saw these scars when we got together and was like, these scars are great. But I'm like, no, in Greensboro in 2010, number one, my mom was like, they have rough edges, because I'm master sewist, master seamstress is like, it can't have no rough edges. So this might not
Right.
work out.
Yes.
But I had created something, and I have a lot of them. Like, and I have a lot of my yarn here now. I was also, in addition to getting out to Vogue last year, I was able to get back down to North Carolina and get some of my
I guess
stuff,
okay. Okay.
get a lot of my stuff. And so I'm opening up, and I'm like, oh, here's all my red heart. Here's some of
Yes.
these scarves, all of that, and here's all the pot holder looms I had, and I'm gonna revisit that. That's gonna be coming back. But at the
Hmm.
time, I didn't have that connection and rootedness in it. Then
Wow.
but fast forward, it's 2016.
Okay.
I had gotten a job in bike and pet advocacy in Kansas City. So basically, everything I had worked for on my main handle at Black Urbanist had come together in a lot of ways. And
Okay.
so here I am out in the Midwest. I realize now that, I had made my first business my hobby, and like all encompassing, for the better part of about 6 or 7 years. But I needed something to do that wasn't that.
Okay.
So I had found my way to the Joanne, which it was just baffling, because that was kind of the first of when I learned that some of these stores don't locate in areas where Black folks live. Don't matter where you are. Now, in North Carolina, it feels a little different because everything is close together. Where our there's a density that is there that is non-existent in the Midwest, even while
Yeah.
we're still country in North Carolina and Virginia. Like mine was getting blown on all levels. And so I realized how much I really loved like the novelty fabrics. And then of
Okay.
course, I had, before I left North Carolina, a friend of ours was very involved with Spoonflower in its infancy.
Mm.
She had
Okay.
actually been commissioned to, so of course, the Greensboro 4 is a very big part of our lives. I was named
Right.
one of the next ones in 2015. And in 2013, as part of a commemoration, we
Mhm.
actually did like a street painting that honored the actual lunch counter seats. They're these hexagons, and there's like a hexagon surface pattern. And she had created that hexagon surface pattern because she had already built up like her spoonflower profile, was known as a graphic designer. There's pictures of me like painting the hexagons. And so
Right.
I learned that there is a thing where you could go online, go in like Adobe, create surface patterns, and then put them on fabric. I was like, okay, now, it took me a while to do this because I didn't want to copy my friend. I had to get out of that mindset of feeling like I was copying this.
Right. 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 Right.
And,
Yeah.
we were very much in, oh, well, she copying somebody and she doing this. What she think she doing? She the urban planner. Why she over here sewing? Why she over here? And I still deal with that a little bit. People just can't fathom multicultural and renaissance and mixed media and all the things that exist that
Yes.
abound doing multiple things. But I needed that. Like I needed that refuge in Kansas City with I had a cousin that had moved out there, but they were
Yes.
older. I was the only black person in my office, and it was a very different feeling than it is in the South.
Yes.
The racism and the culture and just certain things. I did have a white male partner at the time, and they couldn't even fathom that. Like they couldn't fathom that. I don't think they could fathom
Hmm.
that I was light skinned. My hair was poofy like this. And one time I had gone to a black salon and the lady had done a good press on my hair. And they were like, that's when they wanted to touch it. They didn't want to touch the afro. They wanted to touch the press. Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
So this is the environment we were in, and on top of that, we were basically a bike company. So if you've been into
Okay.
like a Trek bike shop, they have like the shop, and everybody's kind of like in,
Hmm.
in the like tight suits, or they're in like t-shirts. And I'm coming to work, kind of, I'm putting together stuff for work. I'm a
Sure.
communication person. I'm a membership person. I'm supposed to be helping them raise money and spread the word about themselves. I
Right.
was on TV a lot. I was on TV on my bike. And, on the one hand, we're telling people they don't need to wear certain things to be on a bike. But then on the other hand, we're wearing certain things. So there was a
Huh.
territorial thing going on there. There was this little cute store called Modern Makers. I don't
Okay.
know, Kansas City folks, you can tell me if Modern Makers is still hanging out. I know Yarn Social is definitely a thing, but Yarn Social
Yes.
was not a thing when I was there in
Okay.
2015, 2016. And plus, I wasn't doing yarn quite yet. I
Right.
was
Okay.
more thinking I was going to go on Spoonflower, print out these
Fabrics.
prints, and try to make something of it.
Okay.
IKEA was selling their sewing machine, and I picked it up. And like
Oh.
everybody else that bought that little size sewing machine,
Uh-huh.
I was disappointed. That thing was eating
Um,
fabric. It was chewing fabric, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't.
ooh.
I was
Oh
able
no.
to. I think I ended up. I got this. I had ended up covering because the apartment I had mirrored walls.
Hmm.
The closet was mirrored, and that was one of my bedroom walls. And then there was another mirrored closet. I covered the bedroom walls with this beautiful, like sky blue kind of. It is that Carolina blue tint that had birds on it.
Okay.
Okay, I
Okay.
had created a little wall of home, and then I still have like my little peacock fabric with me that I had kind of created tapestry. Eventually, back behind me, I'm gonna put that peacock up and probably have my logo back here as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that'll be a
Yeah,
good
and
setup.
so I had gotten some hem tape. Like IKEA was even selling hem tape back then, like a little fusible hem tape. And so I was able to iron and hem my
Yes.
little peacock novelty fabric tapestry. So
Okay.
that was, and then I think I got like maybe third place in like my apartment decorating contest that year. So I did a little apartment therapy, a little bit, kind of localized, kind of our apartment company that had owned several buildings on this block in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Predatory, but at least we had our apartment contest, and
But-
at least I wasn't burning up because they had nailed the windows shut. So I'm in there burning up the air.
Woo.
We had window units. I'm far away from home. They ain't tell me that I had to get a parking permit. There were no parking permits, so I'm working with parking on the street. Nobody told me I needed to change my insurance over. Like there were so many things that did not get told.
Don't we learn a lot going through the fire sometimes? Just,
Yes, we did. Yes, we do.
we get dropped in it, and it's like, okay, go survive.
Go survive. And that was what it was. And so I came back to my spoon flour, and
Mm-hmm.
so I basically just kind of crashed out. I was having migraines. Like once I had
Mm.
2 weeks worth of migraines on 2 separate weeks, both in like the fall of 2015. I was out straight with, and I literally had ocular I would wake up with an ocular every single day, then
Oh,
pain, but then and the cycle will repeat itself every single
right,
day
right,
for a week.
right,
And
right.
the next spring it happened again, and I
Okay.
realized that it was just the stress level wasn't there. But what
Yeah.
I did not have the tools for, even though I was in therapy, I did not have the tools for saying, okay, this is depression, this is a
Right.
symptom, you're in a nonprofit environment, there's certain things that happen. And so it took me coming to DC, because I thought, okay, well, at least I'll go to DC and make good money doing what
Right.
I'm doing. I get here, and it's like people are like, "Why are you here? I knew you from no. Wait, you were no. What? Why are you here?"
Right.
So it was a lot of, and then I wasn't really able to set up anything there. That same old sewing machine, I did ship it across the country. Now some
Okay.
other things didn't make it, but that little sewing machine made it. Even though I
Okay.
thought it was just me and I couldn't sew anymore, even though I was eating fabric and chewing up things,
Oh,
and
that's the
my body liked
worst.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to I put that to the side. And then I would periodically go home. And I think at one point I had gone home and gotten some of my yarn. But there was all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of stuff going on with me just getting settled and finally getting some
Right.
economic footing, back and forth between DC and Baltimore. I
Okay.
get back to DC. I go on the DC Public Library website.
Mm-hmm.
And of course now I had started KristPattern by this point. I had started posting some spoonflower patterns. I have patterns on spoonflower, so that exists.
Okay.
But I'm seeing that spoonflower is not going to pay my bills.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a yes.
And this
Yeah.
was before they made all their little changes. Like
Okay.
I don't even want to talk about their little changes because I'm a little upset with them right now because they have taken most of my patterns off, even though I'm in Black Artists Matter and I had to ask to be in there. But that's yeah. So
Oh. Oh. Okay.
oh
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. No disrespect. Now, shout out to Terrence. I'm so happy to see him in featured this that was featured last month, and I'm still
Terrence
happy.
Williams.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out
Mm-hmm.
to him and anybody that they are featuring. I can see where there is a use for it, but that's a shift from what I thought I was going to use it for, what a lot of people thought they were going to use it for. And I
Mm.
definitely think that they should be doing better with the actual pattern designers that they are cultivating and then selling to interior designers and sewists who sew with the patterns. So,
Okay.
and of course, I picked up on that because of my other career dealing with the intricacies of DE&I and
Right.
racial
Right. Right. Right.
disparity and class disparity
Right.
in my regular career. And I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
okay, dealing with this over here is not what I signed up for. So we gonna get situated.
Yeah, but like, so as you were talking, I'm just thinking how a lot of your worlds cross over, intertwine,
Mhm.
and that is the case for a lot of us. A lot of us have found that we come to crafting, or we come to fiber arts, like you said, maybe to escape or to relax, and then you find yourself kind of dealing with some of the same things that you're dealing with in the real world. um but that's
Yes,
just life. It's just everything is a microcosm of the community, the world as a whole, right? Oh, as a whole, right?
yeah, yeah,
um so okay, so we've got the journey, which is just amazing, like hearing, you know there are just so many things that you keep touching on that I'm like, oh gosh, like yarn social, I've been there.
yeah,
How weird is that? Like, I,
yeah. And I haven't, but we've interacted. And I would say if I had been doing yarn back then, things might look a little different. But
okay.
yarn did not happen until 2019.
Yep.
I had met the Bay by then. We had been dating about 6 months. She was in Oxon Hill. I was living in downtown DC, and well, not
Okay.
downtown. I was living more near Howard University in a room like a group house.
Right.
That's probably one of the more stable places I had lived in, and I was able to start thinking about, okay, I was working at a coffee house, and then one day, DC Public Library, shout out to them because we actually have sewing machine, 3D printer, all of that at the new MLK Library. It is open again, so when you come through, got to come
Okay.
to the MLK Library.
Okay.
That Capitol View Library, which it was a temporary version of it, but that's the other library. For those of you who know DC, it is
Mhm.
in Ward 7, is in one of our legacy Black neighborhoods. They also have sewing machines, and they also had a crochet meetup. And since I was working nights or afternoons, really, I was
Mhm.
able to go to this crochet meetup in the morning. And so I had a skein of like this heavyweight yarn because
Okay.
Christmas of 20, we'll rewind back a little bit. Christmas of 18, I come home to Greensboro. I was doing some consulting, and so I had a big check. And that check, I realized I no longer had a Greensboro bank. Wells Fargo had acted up on me, so I had moved my money out of there. But I was in the one of the credit unions up here, and I figured I could go to the cash points machine like I used to with NC State Employees Credit Union because both of
Okay.
my parents are Gilbert County school retirees. So
Okay.
we and that was another thing, just realizing as I'm moving around these various areas, infrastructures, even for Black folks, is so different.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
many things that we take for granted in the South, and I think that's why there's this movement to go back South. Even though, of course, as a queer person, that's an asterisk. We'll get to that. There's that asterisk there. But I was trying to get money out of my account. I was trying to get my money to clear. I'm running from pillar to post. I'm at Food Line trying to buy gift cards to try to get access to my money. But I was able to go to Joanne and Harris Teeter and Greensboro folks. I was on West Market Street when that Harris Teeter and that was right there by the Joanne.
I know what you're talking about. Go
Yes,
ahead.
I was on West Market Street and I was able to go in that Harris Teeter and buy Christmas cards, and the card
Mhm.
went through. And I was able to go in that Joanne and get some cash back, and I got a how to crochet kit.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
is when the modern era of Chris started.
Yeah.
I went
Yeah.
home, and that was that year that Gilmore Girls, they had that revamp. So I'm at home, and I had made a long pot holder loom. I was trying to kind of finagle a scarf together on like my Martha hacked pot holder tabletop loom. So I was working on that. That was my Christmas project of that year. And then I was
Okay.
wanting to make some zipper bags, but I'm still learning how to use the zipper foot. And of course, my
Okay.
mom's machine is a workhorse, but it's still older.
Yeah.
And makes that hum, and that hum scares me. And then it goes bam, 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 and that bam, bam, bam. I was like, oh no, I don't know if I like this noise, considering
Yeah.
where we're living.
Right.
Now this singer I got behind me, I literally just got out 2 weeks ago, and it's making good noise. And so that's kind of the next chapter of KristPattern. But the
Okay.
crochet chapter started literally 5 years ago today because it was March of 2019 when I went to that DC Public Library branch with my with this random chunky weight yarn that I had gotten at some point, maybe at a Joanne, Michaels, even Hancock. I don't remember if they had
Right.
some, they probably did. And I had it, and I had some hooks, and I took it, and those Black elders got me together.
Mhm.
They got me together, and they got me, and I was and I took one of those. I took the cow pattern out of that. I'll teach myself how to crochet. I
Mhm.
shortened. That's what the Chrisfinity shawl is. It's basically that infinity, but it's not that full cow. It's actually just a long scarf. So I made the first one. Then it was like an afternoon in Rockville. I was the Bay was taking driving lessons, and I was at another library, and I was sitting out in the corner, and then I realized I could use those little boy stitch markers that hook,
Yes.
and use that to help me round the corner and not turn my chain. That is when the scarf became a scarf, and that is when I picked up. Now
Mm.
I still just made scarves all of 2019, and
Okay.
then I found a good setup, and then I moved to her apartment, and so I'm in Oxon Hill, and I'm adjusting
Mhm.
to that, and I'm not out quite out of the closet yet. So people in DC know,
Okay.
have not confirmed with family. Still figuring out, okay, are we safe here? Because I'm Southern. I'm Baptist.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
there's
Right.
there's a lot to get through there, and so I was crocheting, and I was doing my little jobs here and there, and I was it was helping me find centering, but I was also very conscious of, okay, going in rooms, going in our craft rooms, are people all right? Are they all right with this? Are they gonna be sitting here talking reckless as we want
Gotcha.
to do? Now, I love a good Black sewing and crafting room. You know,
Yeah.
shout out to Terry at Gathering Yarns for creating it, and we do. Everybody needs to come through and do what you can to make sure that she stays encouraged and stays in business, because we're doing that. We're
Absolutely.
creating that here in the DMV.
Yeah.
And of course, shout out to Sweet Pea Fiber and Three Little Birds. We on Wednesday nights, there's that multicultural environment, that multi-age, multi-generation
Ah,
environment.
okay.
You know,
Okay.
so those are my rooms that I'm in, and I found them when we locked down, because I was sewing scarves until I was making scarves until we locked down. We locked down. I wasn't really doing nothing in the first parts. I was not that person, and I was not sewing masks because I still just had that other machine. But
Okay.
I had finally, I was getting my hair together. I was like getting my hair together, and I found the women of I Am Black Girl Curls. And when the salons opened, I found a stylist who I've been with now for going on, gosh, just going on 5 years with her.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
2020, like 4 years with her. And so she's the
True.
one that you can wash and go. You can put the color in your hair. You can get the little angles
Hmm.
going. So but I realized I needed to be wearing bonnets more. This is before we had the
Yes.
bonnet debate. So I was like, okay, well, let me hide my bonnets in some crochet things. And so
Okay.
that's when I really picked it up again. I was trying to do stuff in the round. And then I started taking less. We started going to the Joanne. At the time, we would go up to the Joanne in Greenbelt. We would go to Silver Diner. This was kind of our little ritual. We would go do pick up at Silver Diner, eat in the car, mask
Okay.
up, go in and go to Joanne. And so she started
Okay.
teaching yarn. They had like a yarn bin for sale. She picked up some patent sock, squished it. Was like, okay, what could I make of this? I thought I was gonna make me like a little NC State something because it was like this gray and red. It was all of our little colors.
Sure.
I ended up just making the square and realizing, you know what? I've made a square. I think I can make a garment. And so that
Okay.
was my first garment journey. And then that's when the skirt happened. Because then I think and then that was when we started going to all the yarn stores. That's when we started our. Anybody who's was just on my IG this morning saw that we do go to. We love going to craft stores together, the festivals, the
Was
stores.
this the date night post? I saw. I loved it. I loved it. That the date night
So
was at Joanne's. Yes.
yes, yes. And so, but at the beginning, it was more of her watching me, and of course, she's like, "Gosh, that's fascinating. I want to learn how to do one of these fiber arts."
Sure.
She thinks sewing's going to stick.
Okay.
Um, yeah, because I got this machine. I got it at Scrap Baltimore.
Okay.
Um, Anybody else who follows us knows that Les has been going through some serious health issues, has an
Mhm.
advocacy group, Endo Queer. We were at the tail end of a hospitalization at Hopkins, and I was like, okay, I
Mhm.
saw this sewing machine on Scrap Baltimore site. Stay put in the car. I'm gonna run in real quick and I'm gonna grab it. It looks good. It's been serviced. It's $70. I went in there, picked up some yarn, picked up some fabric. But when I brought it to our old Oxon Hill apartment, I didn't really have the space for it. A friend had
Mm.
given me a sewing table that was configured well. And then we've been up and down with
Right.
still up and down with jobs, income, Black girl
Yes.
business up and down. So
Yes.
I was at least crocheting. I was crocheting,
Okay.
made the skirt. I made her shorts. People have seen
Yes.
her lesbian pride black shorts.
Love
Um,
those.
yeah, and then of course fast forward to last year, making
Yeah.
the dress. We moved back into the district into his apartment. I get my table set up. My aunt got
Mhm.
me a Joanne gift card, so I got the table, and then I
Mhm.
realized that I needed to have the table level. That was probably a problem. And then like 2 weeks ago, I plug it in, and Les was like, you know what? Because we had gone to Joanne and Woodbridge. She had seen some Simpsons fabric. She's like, okay,
Okay.
help me make the pillow. I don't care if the pillow's raggedy. Let's just test the machine out with the
Just
pillow.
to get it started. Right. Put your
That was
hands in it.
last Saturday. And so I
Okay.
cranked this thing up
Yeah.
and we are running. That's that. So
I
she's
love
got
it.
pillows ready to go. I've
Yeah.
got Aronica ME 2050 ready to go. Aronica be cold, needle in the bell. Like
Okay.
And then when I got, and now what got interrupted? COVID interrupted us. We got our first case. Now we've been spared. We got our first case. We got through it,
Mm.
thankfully. That was a scary thing. That's why we're so hyper careful, because we were scared. We were going, it wasn't going to go good.
Right.
When, yeah, it's things, but I
Yeah.
got things to say about that, but I'll keep it on sewing for a moment here and crafting. Health disparities too. Health disparities are real. So
Yes. 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 Yes.
I I I got better, and as I got better, but while I was in quarantine and taking it seriously, because we did 14 days. Our doctors
Yes.
will take 14 days.
Right.
So we're in. She's out here in the living room. I'm in the bed, and so I listened to the Audacity podcast. I think it's Fix It podcast, Francesca Ramsey and Delon. Like, so I'm listening to their podcast, and then I'm also listening to Julian Collins and Veronica B. Cole's Audacity podcast. That's what's
Okay.
getting me through. And I'm looking at, and I realized that I can at least crochet. I can at least watch sewing and crafting videos. Maybe don't watch nothing. Don't do no political stuff. I stayed
Right.
off my Black Urbanist Twitter. I didn't do no urban planning for real. I popped in and out, but I
Right.
wasn't
Right.
trying to stress myself, just so I could come back out of this and be doing something.
Right. Right. Right.
So the day I tested negative, the first thing I wanted to do was go to Joanne, because I literally had immersed myself in craft and fiber for
Right. So there, you had a
weeks.
list. I'm sure you walked in ready to buy all the
I
things.
did. Oh yeah, I
Yes.
did. And I had a setup, and I was like, okay. And I've been kind of working out, okay, because I'm in some of Rachel Rogers' programs. I'm in another business course. So like this
Mm-hmm.
year, my plan for 2024 is to be completely independent. I've been editing part time for a publication that's winding down. They're a client of mine, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm working for them, so that can't be the case. So
Gotcha.
we are, and this might be a good pivot to talk about the other site, because this is where the other site really comes in. But yeah,
Oh,
this is my crafting, the loom, the
right.
sewing machine, the crochet, the dabbling and knitting, the helping my partner, the traveling, the stores together. That's
Mm-hmm.
my happy place. When I
Right.
left Joanne in Columbia last night, I was just so chilled. We were both so chilled. We had some intense urban planning doings earlier in the day.
Mm-hmm.
We got in our little Honda Fit and drove up Baltimore Parkway. It was crowded because
Mm-hmm.
it's Baltimore Parkway at rush hour. But when we got in there, 2 hours later, got home.
Yeah. 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 Now, okay. So, quick question, and then we'll get into the urban planning piece. So, when you're in a craft store, right? Because you say you found like you were zen, right? You were relaxed. Do you walk the whole Joanne's? Because I think you went to a different one, right?
Yes, I wanted to shout out Meet the Jeweler specifically, because we had gone to Seven Corners. Now, Seven Corners is this rare place in the world, I believe, where Michaels and Joanne are literally two doors down. I don't think they will ever do that again. I don't know how that happened. But
Yeah.
somehow, Michaels and Joanne's are two doors down
Yeah.
in Falls Church, Virginia.
Yeah.
They are not in the best of shape. I'm gonna be a little shady here. They're not in the best of shape.
That's okay.
Yeah, and we, of
I
course,
mean, because
those, but
we all know there are different levels, right? Some have been, I think I don't know. Michael's I think is probably there's not as much of a difference
yeah,
in an older store versus a newer store, but
yeah.
with Joanne's, it's obvious, it's significant.
Mm-hmm.
So, but go
And
ahead.
there's been rumblings of bankruptcy, so I wanted to try to
Hmm.
find, and I didn't think DC area had a newer store, the new absolute newest store with the yarn wall, with that spectacular
Right, right,
central area of the cutting and all, like that.
yeah,
I didn't think our area had that. I thought the best we had was what we see in Woodbridge and Brandywine. Brandywine's a great store,
right.
location wise, demographic wise. Like, it's sort of that. I think that was like their most recent. So yeah, that's a really good store, and of course I want to support them, because right now they got them on like reduced hours. The
Mm,
advertised hours are not the real hours. They're literally posting a letter on the door saying when their hours are. Seven
mm,
Corners is going through the same thing. Wheaton Plaza is also a great store. I'm gonna do because I didn't finish getting all the patterns I wanted last night. I got So it was so bright, and we got hungry. So I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I walked out that store with 20 patterns. I walked out that store, and my, of course, knowing, if you don't know how to go in a if you don't know how to shop yarn, you will get overwhelmed. You'll just go on that yarn while me pulling off yarn. And if you go in one of the stores that don't really have everything, this is how you end up with stash, both yarn and fabric, that you don't need, because
Right.
there's not as much explanation. There's terminology that is unfamiliar. You kind of have to know what you're looking for, and that's why
Hmm.
I love that we built up this craft media on YouTube and Instagram and
Yes.
all of our sites.
Yes. Yes, because we're learning out loud. I mean,
Mhm.
we're learning from each other, and so yeah, it's big, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, and but even I was overwhelmed last night because, yeah, the
Hmm.
tables, the patterns they're all there. And one thing I learned last night is that
Right.
you don't that even though there are seasons, and of course I'm relearning sewing seasons, this concept, like I know in like regular New York and all the big ones, you have like fall, spring, and holiday. I know in the
Hmm.
pattern stores you have early spring instead of holiday, and I'm like, okay, this is quirky. Um, but
Hmm.
I also learned the numbering. Like I learned that there is a rhyme and reason to the numbering, and the later, like, there were some
Hmm.
bag patterns. Now there's some bag patterns I wanted like 10 years ago. They weren't in the book, but some bag patterns from a couple seasons ago might still be in the pattern book.
Right.
Or
Right. Right.
the scrubs might be the same. The
Okay.
McCall's book was so weird because I'm like, so men don't need no clothes? Like, there was some missing men's patterns in there, and they had to merge with the uniforms. I'm like, so, and for just for, if you've seen Les you generally dressed as mask of center, and
Hmm.
so there are some things that she'll shop in the traditionally lady section for. There's some things she'll,
Right.
and and of course, like we bodies and all the politics around bodies and what people should be wearing. But then I'm like,
Yes.
but this pattern book is made for the most conservative, so I guess conservative men are only supposed to be wearing jackets, cargos, hoodies, and chef's clothes, chef and scrub clothes right now, and maybe a blazer. That's
That's
what they're
not
supposed to be
very
wearing.
diverse. Yeah, that's okay. Interesting.
I'm like, so I guess if you're a conservative man, you're not going to work no more. You definitely staying in the house. So that's where, like, I'll see, as much as I love walking the store, and I walk the whole store, and I even look at the flower section, and
Sure.
I touch all the fabrics, I touch all the bolts,
Yeah.
and I squeeze a lot of the yarn, and I like to thumb through the books.
Yeah.
But sitting there with that book for 2 hours with a plan, with pattern numbers in mind, knowing there's a sale, having previewed things a couple days before, and coming back because I was like, wait, the pattern's on sale. Let me be advantageous. Let me be
Okay.
wise here for my own budget. um,
Yeah.
I am
It
a
was a
small
lot of
business owner
planning.
myself. I need to be wise.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. All right. So let's pivot back a little bit to urban planning because you've mentioned, throughout you've mentioned a couple of things that are very interesting, and either folks are aware of it just from their own experience, or maybe they're hearing it from the first time, for the first time here with you. But um understanding where craft stores are, understanding where Joann's and Michael's are and their positioning, whether they're close or side by side, if they're urban or if they're in the suburbs, or in rural communities, is very interesting. And the level of service that you receive, the level of products that are provided, whether they get remodeled or not, etc. Is there's a lot in there to think about, and not just the big box stores, but also our smaller craft stores. So when our fiber arts entrepreneurs are going into business, where are they looking to establish their stores, in the communities that they're serving, and have access to them or not. There's a lot that goes into that. So with your urban planning background and the crossover between that life and your fiber arts life, what are some of the most interesting things that you have found? And what are some of the things that we need to change that we can work on?
So one of the key pieces is it took another reason it took me so long to come back to fiber arts
Mm,
is that I was trying to dedicate myself to being as car free as possible. A
mm,
lot of our bus systems don't even service those box store areas, and a lot of those box stores are they're allergic, and that's saying it nicely, to inner cities. Like, and sometimes, yeah, they assume that black neighborhoods have no interest in crafting. Now, let's not talk
mm,
about this often, how one of her aunts who was disabled would knit. And so,
mhm.
and then another thing we talk about is like a lot of our community, because we talk about the demographics and where we tend to shop. If Walmart does carry that, and Walmart has also been taking the craft sections out of its stores.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been changing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the other thing of course, the debate over quality of yarn. There, if you do want to introduce some natural fibers into your making, if you have that itch factor for acrylic that you may not have it, well, and vice versa, you may not
Mhm.
have that option because the local craft entrepreneur. Yeah, yeah, I'm glad that Izzy is bringing this up. Yeah,
Mhm.
a lot of places have lost Michaels, lost Joann's, and considering the state of some Joann's and the fact that they may or may not be going into bankruptcy, I'm
Right.
very afraid of that happening again because
Right.
the store last night the store was empty. Now, of course, I'm trying to find empty stores right now because I think that's what did me in. I was in a very very crowded IKEA after I went to but you go into Joanne and there's nobody there. You go into
Yeah.
Michael's and there's nobody there. Now, I will admit that I do eat at a certain restaurant I have no business going into because with food issues is one of the few fast food places that I can consume properly, and they actually deliver. That's the thing. Like, there is all these layers of convenience,
Right.
ability needs, and then wants.
Yeah.
And we can also have that conversation about fast fashion. And for those of us who care about, those of us who are descendants of the enslaved, and if you care about modern day slavery, you got to go back, you got to go into the clothing supply chain. You got to think about that. So yeah, there's so many political layers. And of course, obviously, we know our dear friend Lisa, who gets into that in so many ways, who, like myself, has a career that is rooted in addressing civil rights disparities.
Yes.
And then also seeing that. But yeah, me personally, on a personal level, only one of these stores is very decently convenient on transit. Now, I have not been to the Walmart that is on the bus line that is big enough to have a craft section, but
Sure.
literally, I can count maybe four stores that
Mhm.
are easily off of either the metro train or a metro bus that has a regular, reasonable time that it comes. We call it headways in that industry, but basically it comes at least every 5 to 10 minutes. Like, you can walk out the door and you know a bus is coming within a reasonable time. You're not sitting on the block for 30 minutes just to
Right.
get on the bus.
Right.
It'll
Right.
just
Right.
take 45 minutes to get you to the store. Then the store is closing early, or you're working a clocking in 9 to 5 job, but the store is closing at 6 because it's scared that they don't want to
Be open late. Right. Okay. So yes, 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 yes. So absolutely. So yeah, access to the stores, access to different types of stores is very interesting. It really calls to mind to me like the discussion around food deserts. Right now, that's a
yeah.
that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother story. But it's very similar where you find that larger companies don't want to invest and take the
Mhm,
risk or the challenge, and
mhm.
so that is very interesting. So, as entrepreneurs, as fiber artists, when we're setting up stores and locations, are we are people looking at, access? And so, Izzy made a comment here, and she's like, Michael's bailed on the Bronx during the pandemic. Now
Mhm.
the closest access to them is at Pelham Manor,
Yeah.
which you have to drive to or take the
Yeah.
subway to Manhattan.
Yeah.
And then I know she's working on bringing to life the Yarn Bodega.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that'll be, accessible in, I believe, in the Bronx, correct? Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, Izzy. I think that's right. Um, and with Gathering Yarns, that's a black owned new shop that's out there.
But
I
it's
think
you have to drive, and we've talked about
you do
this.
have to drive. Yeah,
You
yeah. I
we have
haven't
a
been yet,
bus,
so
but we've been on that end of the DMV. We've been losing buses. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So we've even been losing our bus service in Black communities. The
Yeah.
Joanne and Brandywine, that one is connected to like the Charles County bus system, and is connected to the Prince George's County bus system. Prince George's County does not run on Sundays, and it does not run after
Yeah.
7 o'clock.
Yeah. Listen, I have a piece good story that it came to mind when you
Yeah.
mentioned that earlier.
Hmm.
And I grew up in suburban Richmond, right?
Yeah.
But we were kind of all over the city
Yeah. Yeah.
because so let me tie a couple of things back in. I was in the gifted and talented program as well. So I
Mhm.
ended up going to a school that was um maybe not quite downtown, but in closer in the city. And so, I was able to meet children from all over the city. And from elementary school up through high school, that was an amazing thing because it gave us the ability to be more mobile around the city.
Mhm.
But we took the bus. We learned how to, get around the city when it was, safe for young kids to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
I recall we had a Peace Goods, and it was again like suburban Bon Air in Richmond,
Yeah.
and my mom had MS, so she couldn't drive, and if my dad was not there, I caught the bus. I would walk to the bus stop and catch the bus to different places.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember catching the bus down to Peace Goods and got there, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I wanted to make something, and I found a pattern and the wrong kind of fabric. Um, and,
Hey.
and then was sitting at the bus stop waiting to go back home. And I was sitting and waiting and sitting and waiting.
Mhm.
And so what at that point, I think it was a Saturday, the bus would go out from the city into the suburb, but it wouldn't come from the suburb into the city because it wasn't a work day. So
Mhm.
why do we need to bring people from the suburbs into the city? But as a kid, I didn't know that. I'm a teenager.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, let me walk up to the next bus stop because I know maybe, that bus doesn't always run this route. So let me walk up to the next bus stop where I should be able to pick up a different bus.
Mhm.
Sat and waited, sat and waited. Now, if this were today, by now my mom would have been having a fit like, where's my child?
Yeah. Yeah.
So hours later, I end up walking all the way back home from the Peace Goods, several miles, because the bus just
Ooh.
never came.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so while that was a suburban experience, imagine an urban experience. Kids, you wouldn't have been able to get to out to a luxury adventure or place,
Mhm.
if you just don't have access. We did have a Peace Goods, which turned to Ben Franklin later.
Yep. Yep.
That was like on the bus line, right at the edge of the city, like right when it crossed into Henrico County from
Yep.
the city of Richmond.
Yep.
So you could still, get there, but that's completely changed as well,
Mhm.
as the dynamics of the urban city center,
Yep.
and suburbs have changed. So,
Mhm.
um, now I live in Atlanta now, so it's a whole different thing. um,
Yeah.
and I think about city planning, I think about transportation, and folks in Atlanta are like, transportation sucks. It's terrible. It's not like when I was in New York. And it's like, but I literally could go from
Yeah.
Cobb County to
Yeah.
downtown to a
Yeah.
different county on the bus. Whereas in Richmond, you could take the bus in Richmond and that was it.
Marta,
So
Marta, for his limitations, you can walk out of the airport get on the train, and you're in downtown in 20 minutes, and that still works. I know
Yeah.
they're doing some improvements right now, but they're
Right.
improving. They're paused right now to improve the experience of getting on MARTA. And then when you
Yeah.
come to DC, you fly. Actually, now of course we just got that Dulles connection, but now you fly into all three airports, and there is
Mhm.
a bus, or there is a train, or there is a moving sidewalk that will get you to Metro. You
Right.
get on Metro. Oh,
Right.
and you can actually walk out of DCA. They're working on making that connection safer, but you can technically walk out of DCA, walk
Mhm.
very narrowly, but that's where the safety is. But they're working on a pedestrian bridge to walk into Crystal City, where the Amazon is, and where Pentagon City Mall is. You'll be able to walk out of DCA. You can,
Mhm.
or you can walk into the district. You take the bike path, and there's a
Mhm.
Capital Bike Share. The bike share, you can take the bike share. Like, the airports are now connected. So if
Yeah.
we've made this priority to make our airports, and thinking about who generally uses airports and has that access,
Mhm.
why isn't everything connected? And why
Mm.
is it that we have all these stereotypes and disparities on who is a person that does fiber arts and wants to do fiber arts?
Right.
It can't get there. And of course, this is something that is a been proven to be a mental health positivity activity. I imagine if some of our young people that are dealing with a lot of stress, like even us as elders dealing with stress, could get to a place where we could get things to do some things with our hands, even if it's not one craft, there's another craft. There's all kinds of crafts. There's all kinds of art. Like, being able
Right.
to do art and culture production and having the space, and then the gentrification side of where the smaller stores can't afford commercial rent, and that problem that folks are having with getting residential mortgages, it shows up even worse in commercial.
Oh yeah, I'm
You
sure.
have to have more money up front. You
Right.
have to pledge to pay that money longer. And then the commercial building may or may not be in a good situation or in good shape.
Yeah.
So it's not just residential mortgages. And then of course, it's so sad to even hear that somebody like a Navy Federal could be like, oh yeah, you've given your service, but we're still kind of scared of you. And of course,
Yeah.
the prices are going up everywhere. Because people used to
Absolutely.
tell me, "Why don't you just move back to Greensboro? Why are you trying to make it in DC? DC's always been expensive, and this, that, and the other. You know how to drive, and we're all here." But now,
Greensboro
um,
is expensive now.
look, it's some apartment complexes that are putting people out on the street, and it's hurtful. Raleigh's got tent cities that they're trying to clean up like they did here in DC. And of course, I'm like, we are all in this. This pandemic changed everything when it comes
Yes.
to housing. Housing has changed rapidly in the last 4 years. If there is and of course, we're coming up on that anniversary of the lockdown. If
Yeah.
if we think back to what we've been
Oh,
through and what we've
clearly.
been doing.
Oh, clearly. So, okay, yes. Okay, so that brought up another topic. But and for those of y'all that are watching, and if you're wondering like, okay, like what is this conversation? It's a little bit of everything, right? Because as humans, we are unique, we're diverse, we are multifaceted. And so while, sometimes we can just talk fiber arts, or we could just talk urban planning, or we could just talk Laverne to Kristen, all of it intertwines and all of it works together or works against this, one piece or the other. So, you can kind of see the threads that are weaving through all of the different topics that we're going through here.
That's why
Um,
I put on my pretty handmade woolly stick and quick dress. And
yes,
I do this is one of my dresses I wear, so people get to engage in fiber arts when they
yes,
come and see me speak. I'm getting ready to I've got two patterns that I'm gonna probably make some green dresses out of, and green is kind of my show color, as it were. So yeah,
mhm,
I try to bring the conversations together, because that's the work, the
yeah,
interdisciplinary, the intertwine. That is where the opportunity is, and that's where the opportunity is needed. Like, one of my big passions is lately, why are we still assuming that black folks don't do X? That black folks don't care about their neighborhoods, that don't care about the intricacies of their neighborhoods, and that we don't do fiber art.
yeah. Well,
Why
yeah,
did it
that's
take No Me? And I'm so glad we got it, and that has been a breakthrough. But over on Yarn side, like I want to see that breakthrough for so many of our brilliant, like yourself, Laverne, and Adela, and Terry, and so
mhm.
many others. I can name, and I try to actually when I'm not going to the big stores and doing production stuff. Now this was like I needed to work this up in 3 weeks, and I am still learning how to do my
Mhm.
pattern planning and how much yarn I need and all that stuff. And a lot of people are in my book. A lot of people
Oh
I think would
yeah.
love to use y'all's yarn
Yeah.
if they could get to it. So
Right.
me as the urban planner, as a person who thinks about land use and commercial real estate and things of that nature, I'm thinking about how can we get people there. And
Right.
that is the one thing that I did mention that you're like, okay, when you gonna tease this park day? So I want everybody to save the date. And of course, we can mention this again when I do like the credits and everything, but save the date for September 14th. Tentatively scheduled in Franklin Park in Washington, D.C., on all those metro lines in a very touristy area. I'm going to be doing a park day where, at the very least, we have a craft supply swap. We have a stitch, like you can bring whatever projects you want to bring, and you can sit and stitch. I got
Okay.
a I got a hip hop DJ. He's saying just say the word and give me my little check. I'll be there. And he's involved with a group called Words, Beats, and Rhymes that does events in this park anyway. So he knows his part. He know how to keep his
Mhm.
homie pumping.
Right.
Um, and I'm just thinking of other things. Now we have a quirk where we can't actually sell items in the park, but I'm working around that.
Mhm.
I'm also looking at a VIP where we can have vending and everything. So
Nice.
the date is secured, the venue is secured. I'm working with the PTB or the powers to be that would help me bring this together. But of course, I've been launching a big gentrification study group on the Black urbanists. So that's been another thing I've been launching. Because once again, we hear about gentrification and it's a sad thing. It's like, okay, it's not quite a death sentence, but you know, when you're getting evicted, when you're having to move, when you can't afford a place to live, when you
Mhm.
are getting separated from your families, and a lot of my colleagues are like, well, we need the economic development. Even my Black colleagues are like, well, we need economic development. We need to be like turning these houses over. Or if we build in generational wealth, we need to grab our property. And like the conversations need to
Yeah.
be more nuanced and more mindful of where people are. So my big passion to tie everything, to weave everything together is from my thinking about my southernness and how easy it was and how accessible those things were. I want to bring that accessibility back. I want people that are transit dependent. I want people who are in the LGBTQ community who sometimes have trouble in those stores. I want Black folks that sometimes have trouble in certain stores. I want my urban planning colleagues to see that creating for the community is a good place to start. And then we can have those intricate conversations of, okay, this is why they're moving to the burbs. We can't blame people for moving to a suburb when they can't qualify for a home mortgage in the inner city now. We can't be mad that people are moving away. Well, they can't pay rent. They can't pay their mortgage, their job. They need a vehicle to get to their job, and that parking fee is a lot. Like the kids,
Right.
they don't care about the kids at the schools. They don't want to see those kids. Kids have a different experience based on the schools they're in, and that can be all over the place
Oh yeah,
wherever they are
absolutely.
now. So, and that's changed. Schooling, of course, has changed in these last 4 years.
Right. Are the arts and crafts are the
That yeah,
in the schools anymore.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, we don't have craft. Like some schools don't even have I learned that some DC schools didn't have like regular libraries. Not
Mhm.
all of them have band. Not all of them have art. I'm like,
Right.
no wonder
Right.
our kids. And, you know, people been hearing about the kids unfortunately getting into carjacking and things of that nature. I'm like, well, some of these kids don't have the resources.
Right. Right.
When
Right.
schools shut down, it took us back. Anybody who's read Parable of the Sower, and I bring that one up a lot. I'm a Octavia, like I'm not as much into her like out there sci-fi as much as into her very prescient Parable series.
Parable of the what?
Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. It starts in 2024. So if you've been hearing people tell you to read this book and that it's kind of prescient and now and there's a lot of parallels, well, it is in a somewhat alternate universe 2024 that she wrote back in 1993. And if we're not careful, some things gonna line up, and some things are lining up
Mm,
across the
gotcha.
board. So for
Yeah.
those of y'all who like to listen to books while you're stitching, it is there. It's on Amazon audiobook or anywhere else you go. If you're not trying to fool with them, it's one of the things that I tell people to read that's accessible, that discusses a lot of what's happening. Now, for the longest time, I read it in 2019 and it freaked me out. And I was like, but it's not going to happen. We're not going to get that bad. Pandemic happens, and I'm like, okay, this is probably what she was thinking of. She was thinking of us having, she was probably using HIV AIDS, and if HIV
Mm,
AIDS had been allowed to spread the way that COVID has spread and do the damage, and HIV AIDS is still with us.
right,
A
right,
lot of
right.
illnesses are still with us, and that's where that health disparity comes in, because we're a household that has to drive to the hospital. We're a household that's had to change hospitals. I've had
Mm,
multiple insurance changes as an independent contractor, and it's rough. I'm on
yeah.
things I need to be on, and sometimes I'm not on them, and that also keeps me from being productive. And I'm constantly when I edit for my little paper I edit that's in urban planning, and I'm reading things, and I'm like, this problem could be solved. We could be writing about this. We just lost one of our local newspapers, DCist. It's
Yeah.
we're Lord, there's something popping over here. It's some now here come the shenanigans hard again of all times. I have never had so much stuff try to fall down in my house. I don't know if my ancestors trying to visit me. A door had opened yesterday on me. I had when I launched my gentrification study, I had literally
Mm,
just sent an invocation to them. I'm like, y'all want to come and visit me? Y'all want to make sure that I honor y'all right? Because this is dedicated to y'all. This is
mhm.
dedicated to y'all, and I'm also grateful that I'm able to live in the intersections and privileges I'm in,
Right,
knowing where I'm privileged. What
right.
Toni Morrison said, a lot of her words, a lot of Audre Lorde's words, that's what influences how I show up when I'm making. Now, I have fun making. Like, my fun making is that, like, I'm like Gigi. I make a lot of stuff in green and purple and blue and jewel tones. Like, I have my colors. I
Yes,
love working with chunky yarn. I
yes.
love working. I'm loving sewing. Like, I'm getting ready. There's gonna be a lot of dresses, a lot of big floofy pants, a lot of like mock necks, and I'm gonna get into a little bit of cleavage. I'm still adjusting that. Bodies change, and all this fat politic. Now I'm right on that line of being in, yeah. And Target act like it don't want to clothe us no more, especially not underwear. So yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and now I know but for those of us who the pandemic or anything else, when you're right on that line, that's where that pressure comes in. That is really where that pressure comes in when it comes to the pills and the weight loss and all of that. When you
Right.
first are, you've been used to going, and that's one way where I'm learning. Oh, I was a privileged person in this space.
Mhm.
It sucks that people can't get what they need. Here I am caping for everybody black, everybody queer. I definitely want everybody that have a shelter, no matter what you make. You shouldn't have to work a job to have somewhere to live and sleep and eat. Like, all
Mhm.
of this is coming together. As we've said, all these struggles are intersectional. Of course, I want to give a shout out to the folks that are marching and been marching, all the countries. Of course, this is like Apple's Black History Month band. This time, some people have seen me. I've had the Pride band, but I'm
Okay.
like, well, you know what? It's representing a lot of things. It represents a lot of the countries we are lifting up, that are in turmoil, that are getting flattened, that are genocided over right now.
Right.
The reason I threw my green on today, I was like, I want to do solidarity. I can't necessarily march, but I'm gonna
Right.
be minister of information in here.
Right.
I'm gonna be
Right.
sharing. I'm gonna be troubling the minds and
Yes.
finding that solidarity. You gonna see in my stories some stuff you don't want to see. Please stop limiting me, because Instagram trying to take KristPattern down. I'm like, give me my craft space.
Yeah.
You are just
Absolutely.
reading something. Now I have stopped sharing some of those images where you actually see violence, because I realize like, I know for me,
Can
I
be
don't like
triggering.
that. Can be triggering, but just
Sure.
seeing words saying free Palestine, in a ceasefire, Congo, like eyes on Congo and Sudan, like
Mhm.
you can't handle that. You can't handle that. We need to, here in the States, we need to be thinking about who is on the ballot, that we don't have local news in a lot of places, that we don't have the space, that the president we got is that you shouldn't isolate no more. Now it's one thing, I know everybody's at a different level, but if you now they're saying you just put anybody in danger.
Yeah, yeah.
And not everybody can get Paxlovid. Not everybody can get the heavy duty mask. Like there's so many debates and stuff. And then I think about hydrated broadband. And yes, that is how my brain works. Everything for everybody watching today who has never seen me before, who has never who you when you come on my pages, when you come
You
on
go
that
get it
platform for
all.
that KristPattern, I'm thinking about it all. But it is that fiber art that gives me a chance to ground. When
Yeah.
I'm thinking about all of this geopolitical stuff, I can ground. And that is another reason I came back to it, because I'm like, if we do go to the point where we have a societal collapse and we need to be mindful, we need to be prepared. It may not happen, but we need to be prepared. Okay, what's my survival skill?
Listen, all listen.
What's my survival skill? Like,
Listen, all of us were making jokes about that. Like our post-apocalyptic life skill, we're gonna be clothing everybody, but
yeah,
you know, we're gonna be weaving together some vines and
yep,
leaves and twigs, making clothes.
yeah, yeah. And especially during the 2020 election.
Yeah.
I was, because I got caught up in 2016. I moved to DC thinking I was going to be all right in 2016. I was shook. I was shook. 9:45, November 8th of 2016. I was in a bar in DC, as we tend to do on election night, because we serious here. Tears streaming down my face. Everybody else just drinking. Now I'm not much of a drinker. I'm a emoter. You gonna see the tears. I'm like,
Right.
y'all ain't seeing this red map. Y'all ain't processing this. Y'all think
that
something's
that
gonna come through?
day was such a shock, and it's so funny that to me that's one of those days that you remember where you were, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because usually it's like, well, that's a tragedy, and in my case I felt like it was.
Oh yeah,
I just
it was.
I remember going to sleep because I was like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
like
I went
he's
to
not
sleep.
gonna win. I'm not, now when Obama came in, I was up all night,
Yep.
we didn't sleep. But I was like, let me go back. And I had to travel the next day from Richmond to Atlanta for work.
Ooh,
So I
ooh.
was like, I got to get some rest. So I was like, we going to be all right. Let me go on to sleep. I get up, I'm getting ready to, get my suitcase and getting dressed to go on the plane. And I look at my phone and I'm like, and when I tell you, just like in the airport, it just felt quiet.
Oh, I imagine.
And I ended up in the weirdest place. I was on an aisle seat. In the seat in the middle ended up being a council person. And then on the seat at the window ended up being a reporter.
Wow.
So, we didn't know all this when we sat down. And so when we sat down and just, a little chit chat, how you doing, whatever. And,
Oh yeah, yeah.
she was reading the paper, and then the reporter, he ended up making some comment, and then you know sh I was just like, yeah, I'm just in shock. I don't know what to say.
I don't know.
And then the reporter starts to ask, and so then they're like, wait a minute, why are you interviewing me? Why I'm so it was a whole thing. But I just remember it clearly because I was just devastated. I was just like, oh my God, like what's gonna happen? Where am I gonna have to move to? Like what? And yeah, it was just one of those days that I happen to remember. So yeah, and then the 2020 election, we did a lot of work with Empower People
Yeah.
2020 and trying to,
Yeah.
raise awareness, and we
Mm-hmm.
did the purple bandanas to symbolize, your support and
Mm-hmm.
alignment, and ask people to wear that while they were working for, elections and all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So what's the next thing? Like, what do we do? What do we do as fiber artists to make changes, right? It is our craft, it is our hobby,
Mm-hmm.
it is our business. We are in the fiber art space, we show up in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't use the word anymore, but the intersectionality of it is that it crosses over into our regular lives, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So what are ways, or how can we use our craft, our hobby, to improve the world around us, right? So that, and I'm not asking you that to solve that for everybody. That's a big question.
Yeah,
That's a
but
big question. And sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's just I'm crafting to escape because I
Yeah.
need to find that peace. So I don't necessarily want my craft or my hobby to be politicized or to
Mhm.
be activated. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But for those of us that do, like, that's something to think about, to consider. Are you making choices about which type of big box store you shop at because they may or may not be um
You notice that one is missing, and I map them too, but I have a replacement. Joanne exists. Now, when
yes.
somebody starts frying chicken decently and somebody dupes that certain sauce, then absolutely that other one's going somewhere else too. I have that problem where I'm also outside of the true South. Our Bojangles just shut down abruptly. They were a mess anyway.
Yeah.
If anybody has ever pulled off the highway on Oxon Hill Road or in New Carrollton and tried to eat Bojangles because you think it's the last one before you go up, I'm sorry to tell you.
You got to stop sooner because it ain't there no more.
And the other
Yeah.
thing is, like, unfortunately, I've heard the company cookout is worse. Now that's a nostalgia thing for me. The other thing I've noticed is, like, people don't fry fish the same way. Now I know Calabash is a North Carolina thing. I know we have a cuisine. We have a hot dog. Nobody else does the hot dogs the same way. We have a fish way. Crab. I can get some good crabs here because the crabs don't rot the way they do when you start trucking inland. So I've tried to replace some of my food ways, but for me, yeah, I craft the ground, I eat the ground. I love having a partner who's also a queer Southern Black masculine centered person. There's a lot of cultural understanding there. There's a lot of inside jokes. We're both millennials. There's a lot of boths going on. So
Yeah.
that's some grounding. And I
Yeah.
realize for a lot of people there's grounding, but yeah, people been telling me, like, they would tell her, like, it was somebody that she used to work with that would tell her, your friend. And of course we were just friends, and some people we deal with that with, and some people question them, like, why you just saying friends? But we know where they coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We know where they coming from because they telling us to go to that store just because I make things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I have a replacement.
Yeah.
Now, I have been there before I really knew, but I actually grew up privy to more of that evangelical movement and
Mm.
how deep it is. Technically, that food place is supposed to be separate, but I know that ain't all separate. And there's, of course, we're learning with divestiture strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I'm challenging myself to do more and do better of, because I think about Aja Barber's work, like, especially lately, she's really been challenging us to think about our individual things. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, can I cook more to
Right.
avoid pushing that button so that I'm calling up that evil chicken? That
Right.
we even call it hate in this house. They're like, we eating hate today. So what kind of energy is that when we talking about that? There's a new little chicken spot that just opened down the block because we're at the Wharf, DC now. We have a lot of options down the block. I can literally
Mm.
walk down the block and do things. Whereas when we lived in Oxon Hill, of course, we were getting in the car. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where I've really been thinking about it. I'm like, everything is down the block except for my craft stuff. I gotta at least get on, but I can at least get on the train, and I'm looking forward to making that train trip to Wheaton Plaza to see if that happens. And if that
Yeah.
happens, I'm like, okay, well then I can really tell this story better, and I can do my part, and I can encourage people. Hey, there are options besides that store for craft. There are options besides that restaurant. But we are, a lot of us, because we're in a whole entity, if we want to take it really real, that's been stolen, that's been colonized, like all of that.
Mm.
But it helps, and in a lot of ways, just like people will tell us as crafters that why don't we just go to the store? You don't need to do that. There is a joy, there is a satisfaction, there is a renewal that happens and we all know this as crafters, that the things we are able to do with our hands, whether it's one or two, or whether, like, I have a cousin who's a quadriplegic and he does sound work, and he's has adaptations to do that sound work.
Nice.
I just saw somebody bought a machine that doesn't require a foot pedal, so they're able to sew in bed. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh.
that, yes, there's a Janome that lets you sew in bed because there is no foot pedal.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So just finding those things. And that's what in my gentrification course is one of the things I teach. Module 2 is finding your hobby, finding your grounding. And module 1 is just grounding yourself. Like
Mm,
remembering that, because of course that word means that somebody, that word assumes that people are wealthier than others and that certain people aren't worthy. I'm
mm-hmm.
telling people you're still worthy. Just because somebody thinks that you need to work a job to
Right.
make X amount of money to be
Right.
deserving of an apartment space, you're still
Right.
worthy. I like showing this, that this is our stove, because some people, we get your setup. You got that nice little she shed. Some of us don't have, we have she walls. We have
Oh,
person
yeah.
walls.
Right. Right.
We have
Right.
sewing walls, and that is
Right.
okay. You
Right.
know, now of course, don't tell the bae that, because off camera, off camera, it's something up in here. We trying to. That's why we was at IKEA. We trying to get the house together. We trying to get the apartment together. We 6 months in and trying to get the spacing and
Yeah.
everything together.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take much, and that's another reason I do try to highlight the ease. I also will be getting into talking about the online sites and ordering from certain places. Other
Yeah.
that other one, because there are online options. There are smaller
Yeah. I like
from
to.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah, because we've been talking about urbanization, but also like touching on the rural space and in the
Yes.
rural South. Some
Yeah.
people that is the only one place that
Yeah.
they have access
Yeah.
to physically
Mhm.
walk into a craft
Yeah.
store, and it's like, do you do that just because we want our stuff, we want our yarn, we want our things?
Mhm.
Um, is it enough to know that the place where you're shopping doesn't value you,
Mhm.
doesn't value, members of the LGBTQ plus, queer community, does not value, your reproductive rights as a woman?
Yeah.
Um, is it okay to still give them your money because, you know, there's a yarn that you need? But that's an individual choice. Like everybody has
Yeah.
to
And that
you
I
get you have
feel, I know of at least one person that's in that boat, and I'm like, I feel for you. But here's the interesting thing about that store: they almost don't want to see us. So when you
oh
come
yeah.
up in there, just we have seen it as a queer couple that goes to all these stores, because depending on the neighborhood you're in, depending on the local yarn store, the same kind of politics, and sometimes sort of the liberal racism is there. Sometimes it's like they're black. Sometimes it's like they are not just queer and black, but we present the way that we do. Or I come in and I'm usually kind of in my hard femme, and she's of course in kind of her soft butch, and they're like, and she's squishing and she's excited, and of course she's exuberant, excited,
Yeah.
smiling,
Yeah.
because people think that that doesn't
That's
exist.
yeah, right.
And then on the other side, because we have deprived rural areas of supplies, some things cannot be shipped. Some places, like there's rural, like we know rural in one way on the East Coast,
That's
but
true.
further out you get, and I experienced some of that in Missouri. That's why my
Midwest.
first car got left in Missouri, because I did not want to travel back across there. When you go into a joint called Ozark Land and Confederate flags meet you,
Yeah. Yeah.
when it's just you can see miles ahead and you're still not at your destination. And of course, those laws and that state have changed. And of course, I'm constantly praying and hoping the best for y'all in Georgia, because I love Atlanta. I love Atlanta so much. I actually love it better than the DMV. But
Yeah, but you can't step
mm,
outside of Atlanta. That's the thing.
there you go. Yeah, yeah. Savannah is beautiful. It's one of those places where
Oh,
I
I
feel.
have, and I haven't been down there yet, so I can't speak from experience. But I know trying to go look at the Blue Ridge Mountains up in Brasstown Bald, I was like, I'm so glad that I fueled up
Yeah,
before I
yeah,
left because
yeah.
I can't stop at that gas station.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's once, because like I was driving down 85 and we stopped in Davidson County, and I was so happy to see black and brown folk, because I was warning her. I was like, when you get out this car, you better do this quick, because this might be one where you might see some folk that you don't want to see. And the thing is, it's still different in NC, because I can kind of that churchiness that will
Hmm.
make people look at you wild for being queer. When you
Yeah.
black, if
Yeah.
you start praising the Lord, they'll tamp it down.
Right.
But if you are like what we say, visibly LGBTQ, visibly
Yeah.
queer, they crank back up again. And living in that seesaw, that's rough. But the South grounds me in a way. And of course, people are like, but you're in the South right now. Am I? DC and
Yeah,
Baltimore
so
are
technically,
weird.
yeah, technically, right? So technically, but it's different. It's different levels. It's different experiences,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
But yeah, technically, right? Because and some of the younger folks aren't even going to know this. You're south of the Mason Dixon line, so yes, you're still in the South, and but but
I feel like DC is the South that really grew up. We got our full metro. We got all this urbanized development. And then we
mm,
piloted all those like convoluted deregulation,
mm,
um, consolidation ideas, like government contracting and like we have neighborhoods like living in Southwest DC and near Southwest DC is a huge site. Like this is a neighborhood that's been roughly gentrified twice, but the second time actually brought things back. Like we're under a
mm,
program that subsidizes our rent. This building is half and half. And that is a
mhm.
very interesting. It has been a very interesting environment to live in a building where some people are paying 700 and some people are paying 7,000. It is yes. So, and then the condo building next door who acts like that we don't have dignity and rights, even though they have window walls. I don't know who they were expecting to move in next door, but I'm sorry to tell you, you live in the District of Columbia. We trying to have some like social justice and rights here, even though there's limits. People are missing things like Phillips and some of the restaurants that used to be here because they didn't all come back. Um,
Uh,
Parking here is a nightmare. Like the
yeah,
price,
yeah, yeah,
like I don't even want to think about that. If I could get rid of my parking bill, that could just
yeah.
subsidize my habit, my
Right,
tax.
right. I know.
But I ain't trying to
I
have.
could buy
I'm still
I
paying
could buy more
payments.
yarn. Because
Yeah,
parking in Atlanta, you got to pay everywhere you park too. So I
yeah.
know what you're
And
saying. But anyway,
that's the thing. Like those of us who remember those days when Atlanta, when Greensboro, when Raleigh, like Raleigh and Charlotte mess with me more.
mm,
Cause I feel like when I go down now, I'm like, okay, we doing this in DC and we need to quit doing it. Why are we
mm,
copying this? Like I know how we used to look to these cities, the bigger cities, and want to try things. I'm like, we didn't need to copy that. We didn't need to
mm,
try to do that.
mm,
Stop. Stop.
mm.
What makes us special is our rootedness and groundedness and our care and concern for people. That's another principle in my little course. Like I say, you just gotta care because you gotta tell people to care about people. You
Mhm.
got to tell people to care about people. And so many people are doing government work that just is a check. So many people here, and I get it, we got to pay bills, but I run into so many people that haven't thought about that. What if we go back to Wilson there? Like if Trump gets in here and he does what he want to do, and we're going back to a Wilsonian level of segregation in the government. I read
Mhm.
an article where Woodrow Wilson had put somebody in a cage.
Right.
Like we ain't beyond that. I know it would be more of like a digital case, but we've seen some bizarre stuff. We've seen people death penalties been coming back.
Yeah.
Even more extreme and humane attacks coming back. We don't have abortion in a lot of places. We barely have reproductive rights. We barely have access to health care. Like these
Yeah.
things could come back. So
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, I'm never gonna be that just craft person. I'm 100% the craftivism person because I want to be able to afford to keep doing it. I want to have that time and space. But when I get on my computer first thing in the morning and we all over the place, all this stuff
Mhm.
is going on, sometimes the craft grounds me, and sometimes I just gotta lay down and sleep and
Yeah.
let get
Right. Right. Right.
get
Right.
through the rest of the day. So
Yes. Oh, so true. Well, I think we're kind of coming
yeah,
to a
we a little bit over time. I know but
Oh no,
yeah,
we're not over time because we're over. I think it's kind of coming to a natural end because the reason I say that is there are so many different topics that we talk through. There's so many
yeah,
different things that people can think through, work on, or what have you. And so I think what I would say is, if you're watching this on replay, right? I forgot to remind people at the beginning because we just wrote it right in. Hopefully they were taking notes. They had their notebook and they were taking notes on things that, caught their attention as we were talking. I've written down a couple of things that I'm gonna go and check out, and I just lost my page. Um, I've written up a couple of things that I'm gonna go and check out. I really lost my page. There we go. The Audacity podcast, the Parable of the Sower, things like that. So hopefully you guys were taking some notes. If you're on the replay, rewind, go back, listen to something. If something caught your attention, prompted you to do something different, learn something more, I think that's where we're at a good place there. I think, of course you're welcome back at any time. And there's so many things that we can talk about.
And
Um,
I'm looking forward to coming back when we've had our park day. I'm looking
okay.
forward to seeing you later this month because I think you're coming in for Channing's retreat, right?
No, I'm not.
Are you going to make it to Rhinebeck or Sheep and Wool?
Maryland Sheep and Wool, I will be there.
Yay, that's good. And then actually, we might be down in the A. Like, we're getting the details because of Endo Awareness Month. There's an event, and we may be down there for that. So I'll let you know offline.
Okay.
At KristPattern. You will understand why there are two separate channels because, I know I got to meet people where they are. And I know for some people, you just want to see the dress. And other people just want to see the trains.
Right.
But if you want to see both, and sometimes I do cross posts, there's things going on. I'm starting a gentrification themed course that's going to meet us where we are and uplift us. You can learn more about that over at Black Urbanists.
Okay.
And then, yes, save the date for September 14th if you want to join us, because this is going to be a free admission event. Because, of course, even some of our favorite festivals, the cost barrier is there. But a lot of people can get to DC, or they can at least park at a metro station or take the train down or up.
Right.
So September 14th of 2024 in Franklin Park. Stay on my pages. And also there is a joint newsletter called Defying Gentrification, Crafting Liberation. That's going to be like our catch-all newsletter. Now, if you subscribe to that one, you're going to get a lot of the heavy-duty political stuff. But at the tail end, you're always going to get my craft updates.
Okay. So it's a good mix.
Yeah, it's a mix. But if you KristPattern on TikTok and Instagram and here on YouTube will always be crafty. It will always be my craft adventures. It will always be me. And it's, of course, I can't not live in my body and highlight things, but you will see me make things. You will see me finally get this dress ready for you to make. Because that's also in the plans this year. This is the Christery dress. It has a name, and I've always named everything after myself to really define myself. But once again, it gets political because I'm naming stuff after myself. I'm sewing. You'll see us sewing, and you might see me draft some things. Of course, I'm active. I'm active at Black Sewing Network. I'm hoping to get to at least one of the frock tails. It probably will be realistically my own DC frock tails next spring. But if you see me pop up at one of the frock tails, either in this or something I sewed, you can also follow KristPattern Bay herself, and she links to all her platforms. It's basically my handle, KristPattern. BAE.
That's right.
And we cross post as well, and she's the best cheerleader. And it's Endo Awareness Month, so do think about going over to Endo Queer or Endo Black and supporting that cause. It's Crochet Month. It's Women's History Month. There's so many, and of course we got Super Tuesday primaries coming up. Make an informed choice. You do have choices. You'll see what mine is. But we do have informed choices, and we can push our leaders to do better, and we should. Please do that. That's my last piece. But you know where to find me. I'm usually on here, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm so happy to finally be able to be here for officially for real. Right. And I'm gonna get off of here and actually get me some breakfast. And check on the bay, and I want to get some sewing and crocheting done today, and maybe like tidying up this house, the actual laundry. Cutting my scarf off the loom. Y'all been waiting for loom weaving part 3. It ain't no part 3 because I gotta cut it off the loom. Gotta cut it off the loom. So that'll be there. And then I'll be also doing my little trip to Wheaton Plaza to show what that looks like. So those are some of the things to look forward to on the channel. And then over at Black Urban, it's the course launch, and I'll be working hard on the course launch. And maybe some of y'all might want to participate. So definitely be paying attention to that. The fellowship program is geared towards like the average person who's interested in these issues that needs like fortifying. And then those
Okay.
my fellow urban planners and real estate professionals, I have a program that's more geared to us where we know all the language and we want to learn more about how we can reap more into ourselves and our communities.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. So you guys have all the information on where to go, what to
Mhm.
find,
Links
how
are in the
much you.
bios of both sites. So wherever you are, the links
Yes.
are there.
Yes, I put the links there already. If I need to adjust anything, let me know. But I think in the description, I've got all of your links there.
Mhm.
And so this will be posted shortly, so you can listen back. Just updates for me. I am um not at home, as you can see, because there's no yarn behind me. So I'm hanging out at my oldest daughter's. So we're over here in Nashville, and we are doing wedding stuff. So we have her bridal shower today. So I'm gonna get off of this and, like you said, get some food, put on a cute dress, and we're gonna go do some bridal shower stuff, and hang out here a bit. I do have my fifth anniversary coming up. I still have not I still hadn't settled on like how to celebrate it. So we might have to do something big a little bit later on, but I'll definitely be acknowledging it on that day. You will see me in person at Maryland Sheep and Wool. So that is coming up in the first weekend in May.
Mhm.
And so after that, everything else is up in the air because the wedding is on April the 13th. So there won't be any shenanigans on that day, because we'll be shenanigan on our way down the aisle, getting these
Mhm.
two hitched.
Mhm.
So April 13th, there won't be any shenanigans. But if you want to be a guest or you have someone that wants to be a guest, DM, you can put in the comments here below. You can DM me on Instagram, or if you go to my website, BzyPeach.com, you'll see shenanigans at the top. You can click on it and sign up and pick a date. But the 13th of April is blocked because my girl's getting married. So we'll be doing that. I'll post pictures of me and my mother of the bride dress. So after the fact, yes, I'm sorry, she corrected me real quick. You heard
Oh,
that. She's like, after the fact.
yep, yep.
After the fact. I can't put I'm not posting anything in advance, but after the fact, y'all gonna be sick of seeing wedding stuff. So that's what's going on in my world. And yeah, so we'll keep everybody posted. Kristen, thank you so much. I
And thank
really
you for having
appreciate you.
me. And congratulations on y'all's end. Have fun with that.
Yes.
Love. We need love in the world. So
We
love
do.
each other. We gonna
And
log off and love each other too.
I was gonna say, and speaking of, give Les a huge hug for me because
I absolutely will.
I love meeting her in person at Vogue. So I can't wait to see her again and see you again and get hugs from both of you guys. So I'll talk.
Absolutely.
Okay, talk to you soon. Thank
Bye,
you. All
y'all.
right, bye everybody.